In this video, you're going to learn how to square a number with and without a calculator. So first we are going to square numbers without a calculator. So to square a number, what this means is that you are multiplying the base by itself. So 3, the large number, is always called the base. The smaller number is called the exponent or the power. So we could say 3 squared, or we can say 3 to the power of 2. So to square 3, we are doing 3 times itself. So that's 3 times 3, which is 9. We are not doing 3 times 2 to get 6. Okay, this is wrong. This is a common error most people make with exponents. It's the base times the base. Okay, this exponent or power just tells us how many times we are doing that. So if we take a negative 3 and times it by itself again, well, we know a negative times a negative is still a positive. So notice when we square a positive or a negative number, our answer is still positive. Okay. A perfect square is a number that is the square of a whole number. So 9 is a perfect square because we got that when we squared 3. Okay, so it's really important to be able to make a list off the top of your head without a calculator of the first 15 perfect squares. That is going to help you solve problems faster in this unit. So in your notes, you have a list of 1 through 15 that need to be squared, so you can have a list of perfect squares readily available in your notes. So we're going to do the first few together. We know that 1 squared is 1 times 1, which is 1. We know that 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. Okay, at this point, you should pause the video to finish the list in your notes. So hopefully your list is the same as mine. If not, you should fix these answers. Just a visual for perfect squares. So 25 was a perfect square you just made in your list, because that's what 5 times 5 is. And if I were to give you 25 unit blocks, you should be able to arrange them in a perfect square, a 5 by 5 square, okay, which is 25 unit squares. That's kind of where they get their name, perfect square. If I were to give you 27 unit blocks, we would have 2 extra ones hanging off the end here, and I wouldn't have a square anymore. So that's why 27 is not a perfect square. Okay, these numbers are also listed in your notes. I want you to pause the video and circle any numbers that are not perfect squares. Okay, so 64 is a perfect square because that's 8 times 8. Okay, 28 is not a perfect square. I can't think of one number times that same number to get me 28. Okay. Same thing with 40. 40 is not a perfect square. 36 is, because 6 times 6. 100 is, because 10 times 10. And 72 is not. Okay. So now, go ahead and turn your calculator on. We're going to learn how to square a number with our calculator. Alright, so to square a number using a calculator, okay, the on button's down here if you didn't do it. So 18 squared, if I'm going to square 18, first thing we're going to do is we're going to type in 18. And then down on the left-hand side, partway down, you're going to see an X squared button. When we push that, you can see that squares my 18 on my calculator. And then all we have to do is hit enter. We find out 18 squared is equal to 324. So 24 squared is the same thing, except for we're typing in 24 and then hitting that x squared button. And then enter, and we figure out 24 squared is 576. Okay, if you ever want to re-enter a number or a problem you typed in, you can hit this up arrow and highlight it and hit enter, and then I can go back and change anything. So if I wanted to real quick change this to 54, I could instead of retyping it in. Just an option. So at this point, I want you to pause the video and try these last few problems in your notes. Okay, so hopefully you got most of the same answers here that I did. There's a couple I want to talk about. This negative 19. If you did not use the parentheses and you typed in negative 19, you're going to get, a negative 19 squared. You're going to get a negative 361. Because what this is actually doing is this is doing negative 1 and then times 19 squared. It's counting that negative separate from your 19. So it's squaring 19 and then it's timesing it by negative 1, which is how it's making this negative. And since I have the parentheses here, that's not what I want you to do. So make sure you are adding in your parentheses before you square that number to get a positive 361, because we know a negative times a negative is going to be positive. Okay. Also, if you ever use the subtraction sign as a negative number, it's going to give you an error, or it's going to take your previous answer and try to do it. So your negative sign's down at the bottom, not your subtraction sign. Okay, the other difference is I'm assuming you probably didn't get your answers as fractions here, because I haven't showed you how yet. So from now on, if I ever give you a fraction problem, I want your answer as a fraction. If I give you a decimal problem, your answer can be a decimal. Okay. So how do we do fractions on our calculator? Again, I have parentheses here, so I want parentheses 1 divided by 2, that gives me my fraction, and parentheses, and I'm going to square it. Now when I hit enter, this is the answer you probably had, was 0.25. So now to change this answer into a fraction, you're going to find the math button over here on the left. Let's bring this list up, and at the top of our list we can see it says fraction. So to select this, we can either hit 1, because that's the first thing on our list, or because this is already highlighted, we can hit enter. So now we can see on our screen it's going to take our last answer and it's going to turn it into a fraction. So if that's what we want to happen, we have to enter again, and we can see how I get that 1/4 there. Now some of you may be thinking, I didn't use my parentheses, but I got the same answer. And in this fraction you will, but that won't happen every time, which is why if I have parentheses, you need to make sure you are also using them. So, because without the parentheses, it's just squaring the bottom number, which we know is still going to be 1/4. So in this case, it wouldn't have gotten you the wrong answer. But over here in this other fraction, if you just square the bottom number, it's going to give you 2 9s instead of our 4 9s. So you can see what happens in our calculator without parentheses, and then change it into a fraction. I get the 2 9s, which is the wrong answer. So we got to use our parentheses, then square it. So it's squaring both the 2 and the 3. And then to change that to a fraction, it's math, enter, enter. And that's how you get your 4 9s. And that is the end of this video.